Real esoteric spirituality without all of the fluff, without all of the nonsense. This is the thunderwizard.com YouTube channel. Click subscribe and then hit the little bell button so that you can be notified whenever I've uploaded a video or when I'm doing the live Q&A videos. Hello, Thunder Wizards. So we'll see how far I get with what I want to talk about today. I was doing some research into the Norse mythology, and I'm thinking about all kinds of things, and dwarves and manifestation and things like that. And I came across in the Prose Edda Loki's Wager with the Dwarves. And it got me thinking about the question, why do the gods need the dwarves in order to make their magical items? And as I was looking at reading that part of the Prose Edda, and I was, of course, investigating, the names of objects and the names of characters in it, which are all extremely important. By the way, if you're going to study mythology, you need to know what the translations are of the names of things, because that's incredibly important. So before we go any further, you need to know my take on mythology. So true mythology, in my belief, true mythology is holographic spiritual teachings that are timeless, that are channeled to human beings, through human beings, in order to allow the human race to evolve. So mythology itself is very magical. And the difference between mythology and just fiction is that fiction they're just cool stories if they're written well. They're just entertaining and fun, and they may not be timeless. So there's a lot of things that don't translate over time. Some really good stuff does, like even Shakespeare. The stories in Shakespeare are timeless. It's hard to sometimes understand because it's spoken in Elizabethan English and all that, but the actual stories themselves are timeless. But there's all kinds of things that we watch now that are not timeless. But mythology, if it's true mythology, is timeless. And true mythology is going to be working on multiple levels. It's holographic, as I said. It's not just on one level, it's teaching an interesting story. On another level, it's reaching into the unconscious mind and stimulating the listeners to respond to it in ways that actually do things to their brain and their nervous system and helps them to evolve on a spiritual level. It has truths that are understood by the unconscious mind, and when taken root in there, will change people's lives in such a way where they will evolve. And then there's at least one other level, which is the symbolic teachings that wizards can understand. And in some cases, mythology can teach you how to meditate, how to do energy work, how to do rituals, if you know how to interpret the symbolism. But unless you have been trained in that, there's a good chance you won't. Or unless you're gifted with the ability to understand symbology. I'll give you an example. As I was looking at this, of course, doing some research, for me, when it comes to Thor's special items, he has his hammer, Mjolnir, and he has his belt called Meginjord, which means power belt, and he has his gloves, which are made out of iron, called iron grippers. And the mythology is very clear that in order for Thor to pick up the hammer, he needs to wear his gloves. And in order to double his strength so that he has the strength of a god, he has to wear his belt. Now, this, for somebody who doesn't know anything about energy work, looks at that and thinks, oh, that's interesting, or that's cute. But for somebody who knows from personal experience what true energy work is, Qigong, this person knows that the navel center is where you store your life force energy. And you need to have access to that in order to have full access to the power within you, in order to heal or to use your energy for whatever purpose. And that if Thor's hammer represents life force energy itself, the lightning force, then him having to wear steel gloves makes perfect sense as well, because you become very familiar with the energy gates of the hands and how to open them and how to connect that with the navel center. So these, you can't have one without the other. And just to give you an example, it's very annoying. On the one hand, I need to be I need to have some compassion for people other than myself. But one of the things that annoys me about NeoHedonism is that you've got a bunch of people who many times have no experience in practices that have an unbroken connection into prehistory. They're usually modern people. Some of them have probably come out of Abrahamic religions, and so they, for whatever reason, now want to become pagan or heathen. The other thing that annoys me a lot, and I won't go on about this, is when people become heathens out of racialist desires or political desires, because it's just one of the worst. There's no way somebody with that mindset is going to even understand what they're looking at. You've got to, in my experience, you've got to have an honest desire to learn and understand that these mythological truths are truths that all people share. Maybe one culture has been given a specific gift of understanding that another culture doesn't, but when you bring the cultural mythology from all around the world, you start to see this whole of all the parts come together. It's when you look at the whole thing, then you have extremely powerful spiritual tools to create magic. So, looking at Thor's hammer, in this myth we're going to look at, Thor's hammer has a short handle. And so, I'm looking through things, and I'm flipping through, looking online and looking through other sources to see, the names of things. And I come across somebody that comes to the conclusion that Thor needs to wear his iron gloves because the hammer handle is short. And I'm thinking to myself, what is the logic behind that? How does that make any sense? Because the last thing you would want to do if you have to pick up a heavy hammer that has a small handle is put on big, bulky metal gloves. Because if what you're saying is the handle is so small you need gloves in order to hold it, metal gloves are not going to accomplish that for you. And so people even ask why. Well, why would that be? Why would you need metal gloves? It's just, in other words, what we're saying is that these are people who don't think that there's any value, that there's any meaning to this. They're just trying to come up with some reason, which means that's how they view the mythology. They don't view the mythology as being sacred. They just think it's arbitrary, and so why? Why would somebody write that? Why would somebody put that detail in there if it doesn't make any sense? If you're just kind of pulling something out of your ass, like, well, maybe the handle is short, and so he has to wear metal gloves, and then you're not even asking, well, why metal gloves? Why was it that annoys me? It annoys me when people don't want to look deep into things. This was the reason I left the Abrahamic religions to begin with, is because nobody was asking any questions. Nobody wanted to know. They're just, they just take things at face value. Anyway, so I'm done ranting about that. But it's obvious to me what the symbolism is that you cannot, because one of the things you do with Thor's hammer is you throw it, and it comes back to you. It means to be able to send life force energy through the hands. And it's very clear you can't do that if you're not wearing metal gloves, which means that metal is a conductor of electricity. So the last thing you want to do if you're picking up electricity is wear metal gloves, because you'll electrocute yourself. Unless, of course, you are the god of thunder, in which case you want to have something that's going to conduct electricity so you can, shoot out that lightning bolt even more. Then it makes perfect sense. A human being, no, the last thing you want to do is wear metal gloves and touch electricity. But if you're the god of thunder, then you can handle it. You are electricity, so you can handle it. But it's very clear that it's telling you have to gird your navel and use the navel center as you're taught in Qigong in order to be able to have that energy and to be able to transfer it. And you need to open the energy gates of the hands in order to be able to transfer life force energy. Now, the average person reading the myth isn't going to get that, and they're not going to care. But somebody who wants to work with energy, who is an energy magician, they need to know that. And that's when the wizard reads it to a student, and just like I'm doing now, and breaks down to you what it means, and then teaches you how to do energy work, which is, if you go on my channel, you can go and just type in Thors Hammer, and there's a whole series of exercises which teach you to create a power belt and to open up the gates of your hands and to be able to transfer energy. So this is true mythology. So we're going to be talking about Loki's wager with the dwarves here. So I honestly don't know how far I'm going to get in it, because the symbology is extremely deep. And maybe we'll do multiple videos about it. But so Loki's wager with the dwarves. It starts off and it says, why is gold called Sif's hair? So right off the bat, it throws a symbol at you. It says, the wife of Thor, her hair is golden. Not just that it's golden colored, but that it is actually gold. And so here it's going to go into, that's the first thing it says. Like, this whole myth is going to tell you why gold is called Sif's hair. And so this means, what does gold represent? Gold represents wealth, but more than that, gold represents spiritual authority, power, spiritual power. It represents mastery. So why is gold called Sif's hair? So Sif is the wife of Thor, the god of thunder. What's interesting is in the Vedic tradition, the wife of Indra is named Indrani, and she is a Venus goddess, meaning she is a goddess of wealth and fertility and sensuality and these kinds of things, which Thor himself would be a Jupiter god. He's actually Jupiter retrograde. So we've got the same thing happening here, whether people know it or not. People are saying that the energy of Thor is connected to Venus types of energies. Abundance, wealth, authority, power, all the positive aspects of Venus. So right off the bat, I'm seeing a connection to Vedic mythology, which Vedic and Norse mythology come from a root mythology of Indo-European mythology. They broke off probably tens of thousands of years ago. Anyway, I could go on and on about that, but we're not here to just talk about Thor's wife. So Loki had once craftily cut all of Sif's hair off, but when Thor found it out, He seized Loki and would have broken every bone in his body had he not pledged himself with an oath to get the dark elves, which are the dwarves, to make for Sif golden hair that should grow like other hair. So the thing about Loki you need to understand. If you do not understand who Loki is, then these myths that have Loki in it will never reveal their secrets to you. And that's the point. This is Loki. Loki is the trickster and the deceiver. But what he's deceiving you on is he's not telling you the hidden truths of the universe. This is his greatest deception. And he presents himself as this trickster who is only interested in causing mischief, and he's selfish and he's insecure, and so he causes all this mischief because of his, and we judge him as being bad or evil or selfish or conniving. But that is just the mask that he wears. Because the truth of Loki, if you are honest, is that every time that Loki is involved in something, he always brings evolution. And everybody always is empowered as a result of the mischief that he causes. So it doesn't say here anything about why. It just says that Loki stole Sif's hair. So Loki is, being the catalyst of evolution, his motivation is to help everything and everybody evolve to their highest potential. And the way he does that is by playing this character of being the thief and the liar and the deceiver. But he's none of those things. But he knows that the only way that the gods themselves, not only humans, but the only way that the gods will evolve is through some kind of deception that stimulates their greed. So it's important to understand that. All of the things that you look upon in yourself as being negative, your character defects, all of these things can be used and will be used in order to achieve your evolution. And there are two ways that that's going to happen. Either you are going to allow yourself to be pulled into the delusion and illusions of your greed and your insecurities, in which case you will create for yourself karmic challenges from which you will learn and grow. Or you will become aware that your character defects are being stimulated and you're being pulled into some potentially destructive situation, and you're going to stop yourself and you're going to say, I want to operate from my highest awareness and meditate through this. And in which case then you will be able to see what is happening and what is going on, and that is the fastest way towards evolution. This is why meditation is always in every spiritual tradition, whether it's shamanism or whether it's whatever it is. There's always a meditative tradition, because that's the fastest way to become conscious of what's in your unconscious mind. But if you're not looking at what's going on in your unconscious mind, the universe, through Loki, is going to then, well, we got to get things moving, so let's appeal to people's basest instincts, which are your fears, your greed, your illusion, your pride, your ego. And those things are very powerful motivations in order to get you to take action, which will result in your evolution. This is the reason why sex is so much fun. The reason why sex is so much fun and so pleasurable is because without it, the human race wouldn't survive, because we wouldn't do it. We only do it. It's interesting. Like I think about people in third world countries who are starving to death and have 10 kids. If you're starving to death, what are you doing having kids? It means that even when you're sick and you're starving, you still have this sexual drive that you can't resist, because the human race itself, the actual physical human species, needs to continue to to live on. So it's like, yeah, you can die, but just have a couple of kids before you die, so that the species will live on. So this is how Loki works. Loki knows that what is going to motivate people the most is if you stimulate their greed or their insecurity, and then they will take action. Now they'll learn the hard way. Loki's way of teaching is he teaches you the hard way. But what he always gives you is something that empowers you to reach your highest potential. And so let's continue here, and we'll get into it. I could go very deep into every single one of these things, but so Loki swears that he's going to go to the dwarves and get some hair of gold for Sif, that when she puts it on, it will just be this magical wig that will then grow like real hair. Her hair will be made of gold, which of course will make her happy because she's a Venus goddess, even though she's married to the god of thunder. Okay, so Loki went to the dwarves that are called Evald's sons. Remember that every single name is extremely important. And if you don't understand what the names are and the meanings of the names, then you're missing out on a huge chunk of information. So, Evald is a name, according to my research anyway, which comes from two words, which is Ur plus Vald. Okay? Ur is the yew tree. Vald is ruler. So, Evald means the ruler of transformation. If anybody wants to name their kids Evald, that's what you're telling them. Now, these dwarves are called the sons of Evald. So we still have this theme here of transformation. And now the yew tree, let's talk about the yew tree. I'm just throwing the word out, transformation, as though you know what I'm talking about. So let's go over what the yew tree is. The yew tree is a tree that is associated with death. And the reason why the rune, do I have an Yuhwaj rune here? I'm sure I do somewhere. Come on, where are you? There you are. All right, so forgive my painting style here. So here is a Yuhwaj rune. In case you didn't know, that's how it's pronounced. Just because it's spelled E-I doesn't mean it's A, because what's the difference between Ehwaj and Awaj? It's because we no longer have this letter. This letter is U. This is how U, that's what U looks like. Yuhwaj, yew, the yew tree. The reason why this is the symbol for the yew tree is because you can see here that the branches come down. Whoops, it's hard to do things back. The branches come down, and then they go up. The roots come up. And if you know anything about yew trees, the yew tree comes out of the ground, and its branches go down, and the branches then grow into the ground and then pop up somewhere else as a yew tree. So when you're in like a forest of yew trees, like if you're walking through and there's yew trees on all sides of you, those there's going to be roots down underneath you. You know, those branches come down and become roots for that other tree over there. So that represents going down into the underworld and being reborn again. So it represents the transformation from life to death. The yew tree has a toxin in it. You know, you can't eat it. If animals eat the yew tree, it'll kill them. It's toxic. When you sit beneath those branches that are going down, that toxin is released, and if you sit there and breathe it, you'll go into a shamanic trance, because that's what happens when you take power plants of any kind, whether it's mushrooms or, you know, I don't care what. You're taking a toxin that's forcing the body to go into kind of a death experience. So you start to hallucinate and all that kind of stuff. The yew tree does other things, which is it'll be hollow in the middle. The older it gets, it'll hollow out in the middle, and it'll get wider. That's why yew trees, you can climb inside of them, because they're hollow in the middle. They die from the inside out. They're constantly dying, and that death is then creating the expansion. This is what these dwarves are called. They are called the sons of the ruler of the yew tree, the ruler of transformation. So that means that whatever these dwarves make are going to be transformative, to bring people to their higher selves, their higher awareness, their higher abilities. So all of these things that the gods end up having help them to become more of themselves. Because can you imagine Thor without his hammer? No, I mean, without Thor's hammer, he's not Thor. So anyway, enough of that. Moving on. So then Loki went to the dwarves that are called the sons of the ruler of transformation, and they made the hair, which is Sif's hair, and Skithbladnir, and the spear that Odin owned and is called Gungnir. So here I want to talk to you about something very interesting and important. This will tell you everything about who Odin is. Odin's spear is called Gungnir. What does Gungnir mean? Do you know? It means to sway. We don't know this now because we don't fight with spears anymore. But one of the things that spears did, you know, being as long as they are, if you, I can't see myself, I want to make sure that I'm in the picture here. If you're holding onto your spear, if you're sitting on the battlefield and you're holding onto your spear is going to be what? You know, twice your height at least. And so when you shake it, especially if at the tip there is a point on the tip, the spear starts to go, makes this really intense noise. And so on the battlefield, warriors, because the people on the front lines are going to be the guys with spears. And interestingly enough, one of the names for the Germanic tribes, the German, could be translated as spear man, because they were primitive. During the time of the Romans, these were the most primitive people that you could find in that part of the world, and so they didn't have swords with armor. You know, if there was a Germanic tribes person who had a sword, he was probably a chief, and he had probably gotten it from somewhere else. Not that they couldn't create them, it's just they didn't have access to this. This was incredibly expensive. So the average person wasn't fighting with swords, they were fighting with spears. Another interesting thing, while we're on this subject, I was looking at a YouTube channel of a battle recreationist, one of these people that uses traditional weapons like swords and shields in order to find out, you know, how it works. And what's interesting is the movies that we see of everybody fighting with swords he said that that was really not very practical. That if you were on the battlefield and you wanted to have the most effective weapon, all you needed was a spear. And if you had a spear, you would be able to take down anybody. That's why the people in the front had spears. Spears were far more important on the battlefield than swords. Once you got into the thick of the battle and you're all smashed in together and your spears are now broken and you've already, then you pull out the swords. And then, you might have a dagger after that. But the swords were not the first thing that you used. You used a spear. So the Germans, the Germans, would have been very primitive tribespeople who were expert in spears. And the spear was the most deadly thing to use. But getting back to what happens, when you have a spear and you shake it, it makes this really intense noise. Now, remember that the name for Odin's spear is called the Swayer. The name for spear in the Vedic is Shakti. The name for spear in Vedic is Shakti. Shakti comes from the same root word where we get shake, to shake. So what happens when you shake a spear? So they have it in their language that a spear is something that you shake and it sways. So this was endemic in the language. They chose to say, that thing that shakes. Oh, he's a master of the weapon that shakes. So what does Shakti also mean? Shakti is the name for Kundalini, which is where? In the spinal column. And Kundalini is not life force energy. That is Indra, that is prana. Shakti, Kundalini, is something else. It is the feminine power of human consciousness, which is found in the spinal column. The way that your Kundalini is awakened is through when you become mature, when you see the truth of your sexual drives, your drives for power, your drives for love. When you understand and become conscious of those, then your Kundalini will be awakened on that part of your spine in that chakra, the wheel, the chakra. So what happens when people try to force that open, force Kundalini to awaken, is they will say they feel tremors. They will feel the earth start to shake. They will feel their spinal column start to shake. So who is Odin? Odin is the one who holds the spinal column and shakes it. He is the god of Kundalini awakening. This is why he is a mental god. Because we're talking about the kind of awakening that happens on a human level, and it also means an awakening of your mind. He's shaking the spear, which is your spinal column. It's you. That's what he does. You know you are working with Odin when you are transformed psychologically. And the energy that is associated with psychological awareness is Shakti. That's why people who have psychological problems, a lot of them, will have Kundalini psychosis. It means that their Shakti is being awakened, but they don't have either the maturity to handle it, or they are in conflict. They're trying to stay deluded, and it makes them go crazy. This is why there's a difference between Kundalini awakening and Kundalini psychosis. The same thing is happening, is that reality is smashing into this person, and they either have an awakening where they see the truth about themselves and their relationship to the universe, or they become deluded. And there's a lot of people that have Kundalini awakenings and talk about, all the energy that flies through their body, and they have this experience, and they become so deluded. One of them is they think they're God. They start to talk about I'm God and everything I say comes true and I can't handle all this. I get this all the time. People who talk, I've been awakened by Kundalini and I'm God. That's called psychosis. That means that the true reality is hitting you and you're going majorly into denial. You'll find this with people who have a lot of trauma in their lives. They've been abused, major trauma. When Kundalini awakens, if they don't face their issues, they go into Kundalini psychosis. This is why Odin is seen as a god of rage. This is why Odin is seen as crazy, filled with rage, because that's our experience when he shakes the spear. So, this is a gift of whom? From whom? The dwarves. Odin has his spear because Loki instigated, he said to himself, you're not going to see this in the myth, but I can tell you that this is what happened. Loki was looking at the gods and he said, how can I help them evolve? They're not going to, because here's the thing about evolution. We don't do it, we don't just choose most of the time to grow. We usually go kicking and screaming into our growth. It's because of things that happen in our lives that either have the power to destroy us if we don't face it, or if we do face it, then we learn and grow and we expand and we become less attached to this life. And that happens through what we experience as death. And remember that these dwarves are called the sons of the ruler of transformation. The Yuhuajru, life and death transformation, shamanic initiation, however you want to look at it. Okay, let's keep going. All right, so Loki went to the dwarves that are called the sons of the ruler of transformation. They made the hair and they made Skidbladner, we'll talk about that later, and the spear of Odin that is called Gungnir. Thereupon, Loki wagered his head with the dwarf who commanded Brok, that's his brother, that Sindri would not be able to make 3 other treasures equally as good as these were. All right, so we can talk about the names Brok and Sindri because Brok is, if I'm remembering this right, Brok means a smith, somebody who crafts with metal. And Sindri means spark. So remember, these are dwarves. These are dwarves. What are dwarves? Excuse me. When the universe was being formed, the gods took the blood of Ymir, the giant whose body was dismembered by Odin, Vili, and Ve, to create space-time, which means that his body is life force energy. The universe is made up of life force energy. And the gods took this life force energy and turned them into beings that resembled humans, humanoid beings. Humans hadn't been created yet. So this means that they represent the base of humanity. They're not humans, because humans are something else. But we all have, as a personality, as humans, our emotional makeup, our psychological makeup is dwarf. That's what dwarves are. Dwarves are that aspect of humanity. It's just the basic part of it's not fully evolved humans. And so the question is, are we a fully evolved human or are we merely just a dwarf walking around? In the mythology, it's very clear that dwarves are often mistaken for humans. You can't tell them apart. So that tells you something about humans, which we'll talk about what humans really are. So Brok is a smith. He takes metal and is a worker of metal. He's a creator. The dwarves create. They manifest. So even the gods have to go to the dwarves to manifest magical items. So that's why I asked the question. The question is, why do the gods need dwarves to create their magical items? I mean, wouldn't you think, if you go from, the Abrahamic perspective where God creates everything and everything else is just, here's God and here's everything else, you would think that the gods, why can't Odin create his own spear? Why can't Thor create his own hammer? Why can't Sif create her own golden hair? They're gods. They should just be able to command. And there was light. And God said, but they don't. They need the dwarves to create their magical items that without them, these are the items that define who these gods are. I'm just trying to, this is a completely different way of looking at the universe. If you try to look at pre-Christian religion from a post-Abrahamic standpoint, you're going to end up making stupid, ridiculous conclusions like the one I said, where if you go on Wikipedia, about Thor's hammer, they'll go, well, we think Thor has to wear the metal gloves because the hammer has a short handle. They don't even give a shit if that makes any sense. Kind of drives me fucking crazy. They don't even care. That's the post-Abrahamic mindset. It doesn't mean anything. It's just some words. Because the Bible is meaningless. It's totally meaningless. It has no rhyme or reason to it. There's no reason for God to create humans and then hate them because they're not perfect. It doesn't make any fucking sense. And so Christians are used to it's just one of the mysteries of the universe. It's one of the mysteries of the church. It's one of the mysteries of in other words, it just doesn't make any sense, and they're not even going to bother trying to make any sense out of it. Whereas with mythology, you have these strange, interesting stories. Maybe they don't completely align with the way life is for humans, but there is always a reason for everything. Every detail is there for a reason. And if you understand what the details are, you will be able to evolve with these stories. So again, the question is, why do the gods need dwarves? The dwarves were created by the gods, which isn't really true. The gods didn't create the dwarves. They molded the dwarves. They took life force energy and molded them into humanoid forms, but they didn't create the actual stuff from which dwarves are their essence. But it's interesting because, the universe is made up of Ymir's blood, the giant from whom everything, if there is a god, like one god, it would be Ymir, because everything comes from him. Everything. So the gods molded. What that means is that our spiritual practice, I want you to listen to what I'm saying. Our spiritual practice will mold our life force energy into conscious experience. And what we do with that conscious experience will actually help the universe evolve. If you want to know why humans exist, here's your answer. Humans exist because the rest of the universe wants to evolve. This is how important humans are. Human beings are the agents through which evolution occurs. And human beings do some pretty destructive things. So through our destruction, through our mistakes, through our immaturity, the mistakes that happen as a result of that, the evil in the world, results in furthering of conscious awareness. Why would somebody want to, or let's say a community, why would a community want to focus on peace, harmony, and love? One of the ways is that they went through a period of barbaric violence. You learn from that and you wake up and you go, you know what, it's just violence doesn't accomplish anything. I don't want to harm somebody else. I don't like being harmed. I don't want to harm other people. So I'm going to live a life of the peaceful warrior. And I'm going to spread that knowledge and other people. And then that's just one example. So if you want to be, again, I get tired of this question. I understand it, but I get tired of the whining. Well, why is there so much evil in the world? Well, because without it, we don't grow as fast. That's why we incarnate. Because when we're in, like the gods, when we're in this perfect blissful state of infinity, there's just no need to evolve or do anything, because we're just blissing out on this perfection all the time. We need the imperfection and the chaos of human life in order to truly understand, become aware, and truly evolve. There's a line in the movie Troy. Now it's an old movie. It doesn't feel old to me, but it was in the 90s, about 20 years old, I guess. With Brad Pitt, right, where he plays Achilles, right? If you saw that one, and he's in there with the priestess, that was taken slave, and he's rescued her, and she's with him in his hut, and she's, he's saying, so were your gods there to help you when your temple was destroyed, and when your priests were killed, and when you were taken captive? And she starts to go off about, about being a spiritual person versus some thug warrior like him. And he says, let me tell you a secret about those gods that you worship. He says, they envy us because we're mortal. Because we can die, we appreciate every moment. This is coming from a man who's like known for killing and slaughtering people. He's just, he's death personified. And he's there to say that life is this incredibly precious thing, that when you are aware that you can die, you value every moment that you have. At which point then she says something, I thought you were just a mindless brute. I could have forgiven a mindless brute, but to be as evolved as you are and to be a killer, it was difficult for her to see that. This is life. This is why we've evolved. This is why we've incarnated. And so we are the heroes of the universe, because this is not an easy thing to do. I mean, I relate to everybody who complains about why are we born, and people who want to blame the universe and think that they live in a computer program and they want to escape the matrix, and how can we have chosen this when little babies are being born and blah blah blah. This is a challenging school that we're in, and only the cream of the crop, only those who you can't become a SEAL, a Navy SEAL, unless you pass a lot of tests. You can't become a Marine. The average person can't become a Marine or a black ops warrior unless you got some serious strength to you. So if you made it as a human being, if you've been incarnated as a human being, it's because whatever you were before you became human, you had what it took to survive this. Not only to survive it, but to prosper and to grow. And if you can remember that, listen, I'm no different than any of you. I don't care how challenging, what you've been through. Maybe you've been through things more challenging than me. I'm not trying to compete with anybody. But just me losing, having my life partner die on me, just how do you survive that? The only way that I get through that kind of stuff is to remember what I just told you. I've obviously come here to grow, and I obviously have the ability to take these challenges and to use them to evolve, or I wouldn't have come here. I wouldn't have volunteered. And the same is true for you. All right, so let's keep going. All right, so Loki went to the dwarves that are called the sons of the Lord of Transformation. They made Sif's hair, they made Skidbladner, which we'll talk about later, the spear of Odin, that is called Gungnir. Thereupon Loki wagered his head with the dwarf, who commanded Brok that his brother Spark would not be able to make 3 other treasures equally as good as these were. So, even now, Loki is appealing to the ego of the dwarves, saying, I bet your brother can't make 3 even better. I'll give you my head. If you can make 3 3 magical items better than these, I'll give you my head. And so, dwarves obviously have an ego because he's appealing to their ego. And why would he do that? Why would he do that? If his motivation wasn't to have them make these magical items, which when given to the gods will allow the gods to become their true selves. That's what all of these things do. So he motivates them to go do that. And he says, I'll give you my head. Now, what I find really interesting about this is that Loki is very similar to Rahu, which is the Vedic astrological north node of the moon. Rahu is a headless snake. He is the deceiver. And he represents the ambitions, the addictions, the compulsions, the obsessions that we have as humans. And Rahu represents success, and he represents innovation, and he represents evolution, but he always stimulates you through your desires that can never be fulfilled. So he's headless, which means that he represents appetites that can never be fulfilled. That's why it's obsessions and addictions, because no matter how much you get, it just falls through his neck and he never feels full. So that's why he represents that. It's interesting, you find the same symbolism here. Loki is offering his head to the dwarves. So see what I mean? This is true mythology. Now the person, who first channeled this information, I'm quite certain that they were not doing comparative mythology, 5,000 years ago, looking at, okay, so what do the Vedics believe? They believe this, and the head, okay, so they're not thinking that way. But then the same theme is popping up about the same being of a different name. The being that is the teacher of crazy wisdom, the deceiver, the trickster. The trickster god wants to give up his head. I find that very interesting. So, again, this is why I see mythology the way that I do. I don't think mythology are cute stories that somebody made up that's just arbitrary to their culture. If that were the case, I would spend 0 time on it. I have 0 interest in that. If it isn't something that I can translate into making my life better, and if we're talking about spiritual truth, if it doesn't connect me and help explain to me how the universe works, I don't want anything to do with it. I could give a crap if it's my own ethnic mythology. I could give a flying crap about that. It means nothing to me. I am interested in the mythology of my ancestors because I believe that these are the truths that Spirit teaches us. Whatever, it sounds so New Agey when I say that. That the universe, that consciousness, that the ancestors teach. And they teach the same thing to everybody in their own cultural symbology. And if you look hard enough, you're going to see the symbolism coming together, which means you can see behind the scenes of all the different cultures, you can see that there is a wisdom behind that, a shared understanding in those symbols. Okay, so Loki wagered his head with the dwarf, who commanded Brok that his brother Spark or Sindri would not be able to make 3 other treasures equally as good as these were. But when they came to the smithy, Sindri laid a pigskin in the furnace and requested Brok to blow the bellows and not stop blowing before he had taken out of the furnace what he had put into it. As soon, however, as Sindri had gone out of the smithy and Brok was by himself, blowing, on the embers there, a fly landed on his hand and bit him. But he kept blowing as before until the smith had taken the work out of the furnace. That was now a boar, and its bristles were of gold. And this is Gulinbursti. This is going to end up being Frey's mount, which is really interesting. Thereupon he laid gold in the furnace and requested Brok to blow and not stop plying the bellows, meaning, blowing on it until he came back. He went out, but then the fly came and landed on his neck and bit him even worse. But he continued to work the bellows until the smith took out of the furnace the gold ring called Draupner. These are Odin's rings. Then Sindri placed iron in the furnace and requested Brok to work the bellows, adding that otherwise all would be worthless. In other words, don't stop. If you stop, you'll ruin it. And now the fly landed between his eyes and bit his eyelids, and blood was running down into his eyes so that he could not see. He let go of the bellows just for a moment to drive the fly away with his hands. And when the smith came back and said, and then he said that everything that was in the furnace was almost ruined. Thereupon he took a hammer out of the furnace. And all these treasures he then placed in the hands of his brother Brok, and bade him to go with Loki to Asgard to fetch the wager, which is Loki's head. This is interesting because I'm going to get into all of the stuff that they made, because I could go on and on about all those things, but I'm still focused here on Loki and the dwarves and this relationship. So what's interesting is that the dwarves want Loki's head. Why would they want that? How does that help them? Because the dwarves are beings that are driven by emotional desire. They are beings that want to consume life force energy. The way to pay back a dwarf is not with money, it's with mead, life force energy. That when it comes to manifesting what you want, you have to have life force energy in order to be able to do it. Chi, prana. Again, this is why meditation and visualization go together with energy work. This is why when people do rituals, they do all kinds of energy work. Even if they know nothing about energy work, at some point you'll find them, they do a lot of breathing, or they do something which puts them in a trance and connects them to energy, and then they use that life force energy to fuel whatever they're creating. This is what the dwarves do. This is why they're magicians. This is why it is the dwarves that manifest everything in the universe. It is emotional desires. If you were to take Loki's head and cut it off, it would be just like Rahu. It would be, the reason why Rahu represents desires that can never be fulfilled, obsessions, addictions, all of the things that inspire us and aspire us to go accomplish things, is because, like I said, without a body, he can never satisfy his desires. He's a head, meaning he knows what he wants. He spends all day thinking about all the things that he wants to accomplish and experience and consume, but he never can because he doesn't have a body to experience it with. So he eats it, he consumes it, and it falls out through his neck, and he never feels satisfied. The dwarves want that. Because one of the things you find out about Rahu in Vedic astrology is that Rahu, when placed in certain ways, will make somebody a billionaire, will make them famous. But that money will also bring with it the curse of money, which is you're never satisfied. I was thinking about Michael Jackson. Guy had everything. Everything you could possibly imagine. Everything. In fact, we will never see somebody who had that much star power again. You don't see that. That time is gone. He was like one of the last major worldwide superstars, that had just unbelievable fame and money and power. And he died ODing on a narcotic that was so strong that it had to be put intravenously into him by a doctor, a medical doctor. He's so powerful. He's able to get a medical doctor to prescribe this, whatever the hell it was that, this opiate that, and even then he's wide awake, and was not wide awake, but he's talking, he's conscious. Normally, if you were to put that in the average person, they would have been out and under, being operated on. He's awake and talking. This is how progressed his addiction had become. That is Rahu. And you have billions and billions of dollars. You have all the fame and the money and the power and the the recognition. He was a genius at, it's not my thing, but I can see the guy's genius. An extremely talented artist. I mean, none of that satisfied him. It still killed him. The dwarves want that because the dwarves are hungry. The dwarves represent the human drive within us for all of those things. And we want that. We lust for that kind of power. They knew that if they had Loki's head, they would be able to, their magic would, because Loki himself was a magician. Some might even say the master of magicians. If they had Loki's head, not just Loki, but his head, it would mean they would have his brain, he would become Rahu. He would go crazy with desire and with obsession, and they would use that to fuel their power. So that's why they wanted his head, because the dwarves are, the dwarves they're not trying to get, revenge or anything like that. They're practical. They want things that are going to empower them. And so they saw that with Loki. So, all right, let's keep going. All right, so thereupon he took a hammer. All these treasures he then placed in the hands of his brother Brok, bade him to go with Loki to Asgard to fetch the wager, Loki's head. Loki and Brok brought forth the treasures. So it doesn't say here, but we assume that they went to Asgard. So they get to Asgard, and they bring forth all of these treasures. The gods seated themselves upon their doomsteads, which is another way of saying the gods then sat in their true essence of who they were. So that's interesting. Again, there's nothing here that is meaningless. It doesn't mean, it doesn't say, yeah, the gods were just sort of hanging out and Loki came in and they had a circle and I said, yeah, what do you have for us? They sat in their thrones, which represented who they were, their true essence, which meant they knew that what they were going to receive was going to be something that was inherent to their nature and was going to bring them power. They knew that this was coming, or they wouldn't have done that. Because they must have known, when Loki says to the gods, hey, gods, I'm coming to Asgard and I'm bringing magical tools and gifts and weapons for you. They know if he says that, then he's going to bring something of real value, real magical value. God seated themselves upon their doomsteads. It was agreed by the gods, I'm assuming, to abide by the decision which should be pronounced by Odin, Thor, and Frey. Okay, so I could go into that. I didn't meditate on that, but that's obviously means something. I can intuit it, but I'm not able to put it into words yet, so I'll think about that some more. Loki gave to Odin the spear Gungnir, which, what did I say, is the spear that shakes, that wavers, or I forget what the word I used was. To Thor he gave Sif's hair. So Thor gets a couple of things out of this. So it's interesting, he doesn't give it to Sif. Why does she not get it? She's a goddess in her own right. Why is she not there? And why does he not just give it to her? He gives it to Thor, who gives it to her. Because Sif, you understand about Thor, Thor is a god of power, energy. Thor is a god of energy. So that means the wife of Thor is going to be his Shakti, his power. People need to understand what the power that women have. It's extremely important if you want to gain any knowledge on a spiritual level. You have to understand the power that women have. And if you've ever experienced it, as a man, if you've a heterosexual man, if you've ever experienced a woman who can empower you, like truly empower you, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't yet, then I strongly urge you men to improve yourselves, to seek to become evolved, seek to become mature, true men. Really find out what it is to be a man and seek to empower yourself, because when you do, then you will attract a woman who will empower you. And when that happens, you will know what I mean, that there is nothing more powerful than the feminine. Nothing. You want true success in this life. This is why kings on their left side, their queen sat on their left side. That's why when you play chess, what is the most powerful piece on the board? It is the queen. It's not the king. You win by killing the king, but it is the queen that can do anything. It's the Shakti. It's the power, the feminine power. Thor wants to make sure that he has this because he's going to give it to his wife. The glory of a woman, ancient times is her hair. Right? There's something else. When my teacher explained something to me, he said, the reason why we grew our hair out, meaning human beings, why our hair started to grow out of our head. We're not covered in hair over the rest of our body like apes anymore, who don't have long hair. They just have normal fur on their head. But we started growing hair out of our head. And he was explaining to me, he said, this has to do with our nervous system. That for our nervous system to evolve, we grow hair. I shave my head because I got a bald spot back here and I got an ego and I don't want to look like an old man. But the reason why monks shave their head is because it gets rid of karma. They're letting go of their karmic connection to this earth. And what are women? The feminine. The feminine represents being bound to the earth, creating life. Women want to create homes. They want to create, this is why women like to shop for stuff. Men like stuff too. But we're talking, again, please don't get your Me Too panties in a bunch. I'm talking, generally speaking, about the masculine and the feminine. The feminine represents attachment to the earth, attachment to family, attachment to things, and to create and to be attached. And this is, what happens. Again, if the ancient word for, we still use it, for the man in the relationship is the husband. Husband means house bound. Wife just means woman. Weef means female human. Husband and wife means woman and housebound. That tells you what happens to a man when he gets married. Traditionally speaking, what happened is that in the Germanic tribes, that young men train their entire childhood to become warriors. And there's, the Roman historians are very clear that, when the men would go, to the local tavern, which then that would have been some place where they all hung out and drank. They drank mead and they played games. They gambled. They went, to the club, right? The entertainment they had was there would be boys and young men who would be doing gymnastics things, crazy kinds of gymnastics. They spent their whole youth training their physical bodies to be these unbeatable warriors. It was like Sparta. It was like Sparta, except I'm assuming without the homosexuality, but I don't know. To be honest, I have no clue. But they would train themselves to be these unbeatable warriors, and then they spent their young adult years, which would have been probably, by the time they were 16 up until they were, 18 or 20, they would spend those years as traveling warriors, and they would go around like, the army, and they would patrol their territory. And so they were expected to have killed somebody else, to have killed somebody in battle, to prove their bravery. And in fact, there was a whole tribe which when I was in high school, in the 70s, we had long hair. That was the thing. And in the 70s, if you had hair down past your shoulders, people would call you a Hessian. And if you know anything about the Hessians were soldiers for hire, Germanic soldiers for hire in the Revolutionary War, and they were known for their long hair. They came from a place in Germany, Hesse, which translates to hate. But these Hessians, thousands of years ago, you knew that a warrior was seeking to gain his manhood by how long his hair was. If he hadn't shaved his beard or cut his hair, it meant that he hadn't killed anybody yet, and that you better stay the fuck away from that guy because he's a warrior and he's waiting to have his first kill. And it was a sign of honor it was a sign of dishonor to have all that hair, because it meant that you hadn't killed somebody yet. And so once they had their first kill, then they could cut their hair. So the guys that are walking around with the shorter hair, it's like that guy proved himself as a warrior. I don't know where that all came up, but there's an interesting thing for you. I forgot what I was going to say about that. Talking about the masculine and the feminine here. So Sif's hair, that's what we're talking about. Sif's hair. So Loki gives to Thor Sif's golden hair, which means that it means that the power of the feminine. It means that Thor, who is a god of relationship as well, because you can't marry anybody without Thor's approval. This is clear in the myth that farmers way back when would pray for Thor to strike their land with lightning, because that would then fertilize the land. And so he represented marriage. He represented the union of masculine and feminine in a sexual way as well. He had that strong connection. It means that he understands that he wants his wife to have this glory, which is her golden hair, which represents wealth. It means that he knew that his wealth came from his woman. He was so sure that he was going to sit there and get that from Loki, because he was the one when he cut all her hair off. He cut off all of her glory, all of her power, all of her the nervous system power coming out of her, which is her hair, which was his power. Because if you understand, true masculine and feminine, the man gets his power from his woman. She seeks him, she surrounds him with her power. He wants his power back, which is his woman, his wife. So he takes the golden hair, knowing that now she's not only going to have her hair back, which is her power, but now it's going to be even more magical, which means that she, being a Venus goddess in of her own right, has this power to manifest wealth and success and power. And Thor wants to make sure that his wife is going to be in power. It's important, guys. You got to understand that if you want to be a real man, you seek to be there to empower your woman, because if you empower her, she is going to turn around and make you rich and successful. It's where your success is going to come from. It's going to come from her. Anybody who's experienced that, any man who's experienced that, knows exactly what I'm talking about. And if you're one of those MGTOW boys and you want to talk about how women do this and they're steal you this and that, you know, I know there are women out there that do that. I'm not saying they're not, but it means that you're missing something. You're missing your own power. Because when you have your power, those women will come looking for you, and they're looking for you not to take from you. They want to be inspired to give you your success. That's what being a true man will get you. This is what Thor represents, because he also represents the epitome of manhood, the epitome of the masculine. And what is the first thing he does? He doesn't say, give me the hammer. He says, give me her hair. Give me my wife's power so that I can make sure that she has it. It's the first thing he does. He's doing that because he's a noble warrior and, you know, he's providing for his wife, but at the same time, he's also selfishly saying, I'm not stupid. Without her, I'm nothing. So give me her hair. All right, let's keep going. All right, so Loki gave Odin the spear Gungnir, to Thor the hair which Sif was to have, and to Frey Skidbladnir. And he described the qualities of all these treasures, stating that the spear would never miss its mark. What is the spear? That which shakes the spinal column. It is Odin. Odin represents the spearhead of human evolution, which is Kundalini, which is nothing other than conscious awareness of your psychological issues. If you want to know what enlightenment is not achieving some state of bliss where, that is not enlightenment. It has nothing to do with it. Enlightenment is conscious awareness of your psychological issues. When you are no longer being unconsciously tossed around by your psychological issues, and you can make all of the choices in your life on a conscious level, then you have now achieved enlightenment. And if you think that you're one of those people, I guarantee you you're not. I don't care how enlightened you think you are. If you're still in the flesh, there's still something driving you on an unconscious level. You know, there are two things, my teacher says, the two things that you can be sure that everybody will be guided to do from their unconscious is their marriage and their career. So whatever you end up doing for a career is going to be happening from your unconscious. Your unconscious is also where your true soul desire lies. So that, and whoever you end up marrying, your unconscious mind. So this is Odin's what do you call it? His weapon is the spear. And the hair, which Sif was to, okay, and the hair would grow as soon as it was placed on Sif's head. So we already told you what the hair is. The hair represents her aura. This is why we like to see women with long, big, hair. And traditionally they would grow their hair very long. Is because it represents their aura, which is what? When a man and a woman have sex, they make love, one of the things that happens is that she surrounds them both with her aura. And this is why, by the way, one of the reasons why men are constantly looking to have sex, because they want to be empowered. Whatever else is going on with them, they may be, objectifying women, and they may be, all of that other stuff, and they're making billions of sperm a second and all that. Besides all of that, they also have this drive to be empowered. So that's why alpha males are known to constantly be having sex, because they want to be empowered. They want power. This is all happening on an unconscious level, of course. And where did we go here? And Skidbladnir would always, now Skidbladnir is a ship, and it's for Frey. Skidbladnir would always have a fair wind as soon as the sails were hoisted, no matter where its owner desired to go. Besides, the ship could be folded together like a napkin and carried in his pocket if he desired. I'm going to end tonight's thing, and I'm not going to get through the whole myth, but I'm going to end tonight's talk on this one here. This has to do with your soul desire. So Frey represents, obviously he represents fertility. And he represents the masculine aspect of this. Remember, there's Frey and Freyja. Frey comes from the Indo-European root word pra, which means to expand. And it has to do with the expansion of life. The progenitor, progenitor, progeny. It has to do with procreation, pra, to expand life, means procreation. He is that power of procreation, which also represents having abundance and having wealth, all the things associated with the earth and fertility. He's the masculine aspect of that. He is connected to his sister, wife. It's one of the few things where you'll see brother and sister and husband and wife. She is his power, praja. Praja, freja. Praja means the power of pra. Frey's power, Frey, freja. This is, you're just seeing it with a Germanic accent. The same words, Frey, freja, pra, praja. Same word. One of the, probably one of the most ancient gods in the Indo-European, going back tens of thousands of years, must have been that word, pra and praja. They're the same thing. One is the masculine, one is the feminine. He is given a ship that will take him wherever he wants to go. So when we're talking about masculine and feminine, men fantasize about adventure. They want to go and explore and conquer. The feminine fantasizes about nesting and creating a home. And you see this with how men and women park their cars. When a man parks his car in his driveway, he will spend an extra, whatever it is, 30 seconds or 2 minutes, however long it takes, for him to back his car up so that he can have, his nose will be out of his car, so that in the morning he can just get in his car and go. That's where his mind is. His mind is already, coming home from work, he's already thinking about leaving tomorrow to go to work. Men want to go and explore. It's another reason why men don't commit. This is why the guys that went off to war, I didn't finish what I was saying earlier, but the Germanic warriors went off to war. They went off to war and glory and see the world and fight and whatever. Do whatever they did. Plunder and do whatever that they do, to gain their fame, their name, their rank, their position. They did that through their military service. And then when they were done with that, they got married and became bound to their house. They're stuck in one place. They are husband, housebound. That's why men are afraid to commit women, if you don't know, because that's where our mind goes. oh, now I'm only, I'm only going to have sex with one woman now, and I'm going to be stuck in one place, and I'm going to get fat, and I'm going to sit around and, blah, 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 and watch television. Blah, blah, blah. That's why men are afraid to commit, because they're afraid they'll lose that part of themselves, which is about adventure. And so you see this in how men and women park their cars. Men will always back out, back in, so that they can just get in their car and go the next morning. And what do women do? Women just come in and just drive head first and get out of the car, because their focus is home. They want to get home and be home and nest and create and connect and relate and do all that stuff that the home represents. Again, I'm talking in extremes here, so don't get upset with me. I'm not a sexist, to my knowledge. Okay, so that's where we're going to end, and then we'll talk about this maybe later this weekend or something. So, yeah, I've talked for an hour and a half. I'll see if there are any questions. If not, we'll cut it short for, well, it's not already. Should, but. Stephen Purdy, question. I am very proud of my extremely long hair as a musician. Does the energy of long hair for men today have a new purpose? Well, I mean, what society says, I don't know. Energetically speaking, no, it has the same, long hair represents power. So, there are Native American tribes, that, for a man to have power was to have long hair. Even in the Abrahamic tradition, Samson, he lost his strength when he cut his hair. It's your power. So being a musician, it's gonna lend a lot of power to you. And there are some people that are meant to do that more than others. I apparently am not one of those people. Although as a kid, I had really long hair when I was young. And to be honest, if I wasn't going bald up here, I would have a hard time wondering if I wanted to have long hair or short hair, because I like both looks. But I don't think it has a different new purpose today. Maybe according to society, but not energetically. It's not going to have any difference. Lucinda Dean, question. If a woman loses her hair, for example, as a result of illness, does that mean she loses her power? I know it's certainly very difficult struggling with issues of feeling unattractive. No, it doesn't mean that. It's a symbolic thing. There is a connection. There is an energetic connection, but there is power. Obviously, look at me. I'm in the most powerful phase of my life on all levels, physically, spiritually, financially. I have more power now than I've ever had, and I cut my hair. There's power in releasing. So when you lose your hair, whether it's by choice or through circumstance, it means that you're losing your attachment to the earth. You're losing your attachment to illusion. And so no matter how you look at it, if you have this great head of hair, it's great. It means you have a lot of power. But your karmas are in your hair. So when you shave your hair off, all of that energy that grew out with your hair associated with your karmas, now you've shaved all that off and you're a new person. And so if you want, you can use it that way. You can say, I'm releasing, my connection to my illusions, my attachments. Richard Tate, new to the channel, please go to the YouTube channel, thunderwizard.com YouTube channel, because I talk about who the Ascended Masters are, and they are the elves, the light elves. Are there Ascended Masters amount the Aesir? I don't know. You made a mistake. So again, I appreciate it when people spell correctly and have good punctuation and can express questions well. I don't know what. Are there Ascended Masters amount the Aesir? I don't know what that means. Stephen Purdy, thank you. I always let my hair down when I meditate, let the antenna flow. Yep, very good. All right. I think we're out of questions for the time being, so we're going to cut it short. There's a lot of new things coming, starting in almost 3 weeks. The 28th, maybe as early as the 28th, but definitely by the 29th of this month, I will be back for live Q&As on YouTube, which means not only can I do these Q&As on YouTube for a much larger audience, but also it means that I get to start doing live question and answers on the thunderwizard.com subscription channel. What that means is that on the YouTube channel, I can take all kinds of questions from all kinds of newcomers who may not be familiar with all of my books and all of my videos and all of my teachings. And so I'm happy to do that. It's fun. And there's some good teaching to be had. But for those who have actually put the time and effort in to do the rituals and have read the books and have studied and worked with me and know all of these things, you can now ask me questions, with very specific questions, and I can get into some really, really deep teaching. And that is going to be on the thunderwizard.com. If you look on the right, you'll get there. It's a Patreon page. You look on the right, and you'll see Manifestation Mastery Course. So people who are subscribed at that level and above will be able to ask me questions live, one-on-one. You can ask your most detailed, specific questions about my work, and I can, answer that. So, not a lot of people get that unless they pay me for one-on-one sessions. So that's coming up pretty quick here. To get involved in that, you can go to thunderwizard.com. Again, here's my suggestion. My suggestion is this. If you want to get the most out of my teachings, there's a fourfold process. First one is you have to know where you're going. We're going to talk about that. I need to finish talking about phrase ship. So I started talking about it tonight, but I'll finish it tomorrow. You need to know where you're going, and you need to have a map. You need to know where your true destiny is. That's the first thing you need. And the second thing you need is you need a vehicle which will take you to your destination. So the vehicle that will take you to your destination is life force energy. You need life force energy to be able to propel yourself toward, it's the wind in your sail that propels you toward your true destiny in this life. The third thing you need is you need to know the rules of the road. If you got a map and your destination and you got a vehicle, you need to know how to navigate. Because if you don't know how to navigate, you won't be able to get there. When you understand that the universe is in fact a matrix, it's not a computer program, but it is a matrix made up of conscious life force energy, and if you know the rules that the matrix must function by, then you can command the universe to do whatever you want. So you need to know where you're going, you need to know the map, you need to have the vehicle, which is the energy, the life force energy that will fuel you there. You need to know how to navigate in order to get there. You need to be able to know what rules you need to live by, which are ways that you can manipulate the universe to function the way you want it to function. And the fourth thing you need is we need what we're doing now. We need to talk. I can give you all of the information, but there's a very good chance that there's going to be some things about it you won't be able to digest. And you need to talk with a teacher. This is, students need a teacher. We have it. I have a teacher that I've had for decades, and I'm other people's teachers. So that's the fourth thing. All of those things that I just mentioned, to get all of that, go to, and I'm pointing up here because when when I re-record this and put it on YouTube, there will be a link up there. neo.thunderwizard.com, neo.thunderwizard.com. Go there. That will have all four of those things. I recommend, if you really want to get the most out of my teachings, that you get all four of those tools that can be found on neo.thunderwizard.com. All right, that's it for me. I'll check and see if there's any more questions here. Among the Aesir. So the ascended masters are elves. You know, you have elves and dwarves and Aesir and Vanir. The ascended masters are elves, human beings who have achieved enlightenment, who no longer need to be reincarnated, who are members, who are not part of Odin's army but have achieved that. They are elves. They are ascended masters. Some people call them bodhisattvas. The Taoists call them perfected immortals. I don't care what word you use, that's what they are. Are they among the Aesir? Yeah, the Aesir and the elves, there's a communication there. So are you saying are Aesir ascended masters? Technically, no. The Aesir are not. They are celestial deities. The ascended masters are human beings that have achieved godlike status. In fact, we could say that they're actually a tier above the gods because they're about to go back into infinity. Whereas the gods are the gods. The gods will always be the gods. And they will be destroyed and they will be transformed into their new state when we go through Ragnarok. The Aesir are not ascended masters, to answer your question. All right, that's it for today. My friends, I see you next time.